The bitterest cold in 12 years gripped Northern Ridge Military Academy, a remote outpost nestled deep in the snow-laden mountains. A thick blanket of frost coated the training grounds, and the wind howled like a living thing as Lieutenant Grace Walker stepped onto the frozen asphalt. Her breath crystallized in the air as she saluted the guards with precision, her duffel bag slung over one shoulder, her uniform crisp despite the chill. "Lieutenant Walker, reporting for duty?" she said, her voice steady against the biting wind. The guards exchanged a glance but waved her through, their silence louder than words. Inside the command center, behind heavy oak doors, Colonel Daniel Marks, a grizzled 58-year-old with a face etched by decades of Arctic campaigns, slammed Grace's file shut. Top of her class in strategy, linguistics, and field survival. On paper, he growled, his voice rough as the terrain outside. But paper burns. Let's see if she survives the storm. Major Ellis, the operations officer, flipped open the file to Grace's photo. Sharp features, cool blue eyes, and a calm demeanor that seemed out of place among the battle-hardened. "Command's pushing this diversity experiment," Ellis muttered. "She's a symbol, not a soldier." Marks's jaw tightened. "I've led this base for 15 years. I know what breaks a person out here. This feels like a setup." From the moment Grace arrived, the message was unmistakable. She was an outsider, a token hire in a world of scars and survival stories. Her bunkmates avoided her gaze, their chatter dying when she entered the barracks. Captain Hargrove, her commanding officer, assigned her to supply inventory. Safe, menial work far from the unit's grueling drills. The combat veterans smirked as she passed, their whispers cutting like ice. "No scars, no grit, just a pretty face for the recruiters." Grace took it all in stride, her expression unreadable, her focus unshaken. She hadn't come to be liked. She'd come to prove herself. Days turned into weeks, and the isolation grew familiar. Grace spent her off hours studying topographic maps of the region, memorizing every ridge and ravine, every wind pattern. She trained alone in the pre-dawn dark, running circuits with a weighted pack, her breath fogging in the frigid air. Her only companion was a battered field manual, its pages marked with notes in her precise handwriting. One night, as she adjusted her gear, a jagged scar on her forearm caught the light, a memento from a childhood accident her father, a former ranger, had turned into a lesson in resilience. No one here knew that story, and she didn't offer it. Then the blizzard struck. It came without warning, a whiteout that swallowed Sector Echo, a treacherous ravine 2 miles from base where Sergeant Tomlin's training squad was conducting a live exercise. Radios went silent, GPS failed, and visibility dropped to 0. The squad, 6 men, including Tomlin, was stranded, their last transmission a garbled plea for help. Command scrambled, but the rescue unit was grounded, hours away due to the storm. Panic simmered in the operations room as Colonel Marks paced. "We wait it out," he decided. "No one moves in this." Grace didn't wait. She burst into the room, her uniform dusted with snow from her early patrol. "Sir, I can get them out," she said, her voice cutting through the tension. Marks turned, incredulous. You've got no field experience here. This isn't a game." Grace met his gaze. "I've studied every inch of this terrain. I know the ravines, the wind shifts. Give me a chance, or court-martial me later." The room fell silent. Major Ellis frowned, but Hargrove, sensing her resolve, nodded reluctantly. "Take a 5-person team. You're on your own." Grace assembled her squad in minutes, volunteers who saw the fire in her eyes. Armed with compasses, thermal blankets, and her memorized maps, they set off into the storm. The wind tore at their coats, and snow blinded their path, but Grace led with unwavering certainty. She navigated by instinct, using the angle of the wind and faint landmarks buried under drifts. "Stay low, follow my lead," she ordered, her voice steady over the howling gale. The team pushed on, their breaths ragged, their faith in her growing with each step. They reached Sector Echo in 52 minutes, a feat deemed impossible. Tomlin's squad was in dire straits. Frostbite had set in, one man was unconscious from hypothermia, and their shelter had collapsed under snow. Grace took charge instantly. She triaged the wounded, wrapping the unconscious soldier in a thermal canopy fashioned from ration packs and tarps. "Keep moving, keep warm," she instructed, her hands steady as she checked pulses and redistributed gear. The team worked as an extension of her will, hauling the injured through the blizzard. By nightfall, they emerged from the whiteout, delivering the squad to the medics just as the storm began to break. The next morning, the base buzzed with the news. Medics confirmed the squad would have perished within the hour without Grace's intervention. Colonel Marks called an assembly, his face grim as he faced the battalion. "We judged her wrong," he began, his voice carrying over the frozen field. "Lieutenant Walker isn't just one of us. She's better than most of us. Effective immediately, she's our lead in Arctic recon." Grace stood at attention, her salute crisp, her expression unchanged. No triumph, no pride, just duty. The days that followed marked a shift. Her bunkmates now nodded in respect, and Captain Hargrove assigned her to lead training drills. The veterans who once sneered watched her demonstrations with new eyes as she executed flawless maneuvers in sub-zero conditions. 3 months later, new recruits whispered her name, not with mockery, but with awe. "Walker pulled a miracle in the blizzard," they said, the story growing with each retelling. Some claimed she navigated blind, others swore she carried 2 men herself. Grace dismissed the embellishments, focusing instead on refining her team's skills. Her leadership style emerged as unorthodox yet effective. She introduced a modified training regimen, blending her strategic expertise with survival tactics learned from her father. One evening, during a night exercise, she led her squad through a simulated ambush without radios, relying on hand signals and terrain knowledge. They completed the drill 20 minutes ahead of schedule. Sergeant Tomlin, now recovered, approached her afterward. "Never seen anyone read the land like that," he admitted. "You've got a gift." Grace shrugged. "Just practice." Her reputation grew, but so did the challenges. During a joint operation with a neighboring base, a rival captain challenged her authority, insisting her methods were too soft. Grace responded by leading a live fire exercise, outpacing the critics' team by 15 minutes. The incident cemented her credibility. In the armory one day, Tomlin presented her with a custom patch, her name embroidered beside the Arctic Recon insignia. "The team voted," he said. "You've earned it." Grace traced the stitching, a rare smile breaking through. "Thanks. Means a lot." The deployment season arrived, and Grace was tapped to lead a reconnaissance mission into uncharted territory near the Canadian border. The objective? Map a new supply route under threat from simulated enemy forces. Colonel Marks briefed her team, his trust now implicit. "Minimize exposure. Maximize intel. You're in charge, Walker." The mission unfolded with precision. Grace's squad evaded detection, using her innovative night-crawling technique to avoid patrols. They returned with critical data, earning commendations and a new protocol named in her honor: the Walker Traverse. 6 months later, a fresh-faced Ensign Mia Patel arrived at Northern Ridge, her nerves evident as she saluted the gate guard. "First day?" he asked. "Yes, sir, reporting to Colonel Marks." He grinned. "You're in for a ride. Things changed here." As she explored the base, Mia paused at a display board showing course records, topped by 52 minutes and 13 seconds, G. Walker, 2025. A voice interrupted her thoughts. "Impressive, huh?" It was Major Ellis. "She didn't just survive that blizzard, she redefined us." Mia nodded, eager to meet the legend. That afternoon, Mia watched from the sidelines as Grace led a drill, her commands clear and her movements precise. When Grace noticed her, she offered a subtle nod, a gesture of recognition. much like the one her father had given her years ago on their backyard course. Mia straightened, inspired, and headed to report to Marks. In the officers' mess that evening, Marks raised a glass to Grace, now briefing her team. "She wasn't meant to be here," he said to Ellis. "But she made it her domain." Ellis smiled. "Not just here, she's the standard now."